Mayor Bill de Blasio on Wednesday proposed an $84.09 billion operating budget for New York City. Included new spending to provide legal services to immigrants. A nod to changing federal policy under President Trump. But the spending plan, like a preliminary version unveiled in January, retained a wait-and-see approach toward the possibility the Trump administration would make significant cuts in federal financing, could carve a wide hole in the city's spending plans. The proposal for the final budget of Mr. de Blasio's first term provided a blueprint of sorts for a potential second term with big-ticket investments, including an additional $1.09 billion in capital spending to create more apartments, some of the poorest New Yorkers, and long-term plans, like tens of millions of dollars to start a preschool program, 3-year-olds in city public schools, and new spending on homeless shelters. The mayor's spending plan also designates $1 billion in capital funding to design new jail facilities, in keeping with the mayor's recent commitment to shut down the Rikers Island jail complex and replace it with jails elsewhere in the city. Mr. de Blasio said he would work with the city council to determine possible sites for new jails, and then move on to the arduous task of designing them and getting them approved through the city's lengthy land use process. The level of spending in the proposed budget is most likely a low estimate. How much the city will ultimately spend on its operations over the next fiscal year. For example, at this time last year, Mr. de Blasio proposed an $82.02 billion executive budget. The 2017 fiscal year, the city now estimates it will spend $85.05 billion by the end of the fiscal year. The mayor took some precautions for the future. The plan, the 2018 fiscal year calls, preserving $1 billion in reserves from previous budgets, efforts to find savings through measures like reducing overtime and using office space more efficiently, and a hiring freeze on some administrative positions, with no estimate of how much a freeze would save. Yet for the most part, the budget largely did not incorporate major shifts anticipating what could be substantial cuts in federal aid in the coming months or years. Mr. de Blasio said that because the Trump administration was erratic and unpredictable, and had so far been frustrated in achieving some of its most prominent goals, there was no point in guessing at the outcome. A White House plan or strategy doesn't change our strategy and our approach, Mr. de Blasio said. We're going to stay true to our strategic vision. We'll deal with whatever comes out of Washington, but we're not going to wait. He added, we could be facing very severe cuts. We could be facing very limited cuts. We came to a strategic assumption, and we think it's the right one, that if you have no idea where something is going, and no one else does, it's dangerous to start making decisions based on that reality. Mr. de Blasio said that the city re-evaluates its budget every few months, and thus can quickly respond if funding cuts materialize. The mayor presented his budget in the Blue Room of City Hall, as city council members in a chamber upstairs wrapped up a hearing on a package of new bills aimed at bolstering New York's protections. Immigrants, in direct opposition to the Trump administration's policies. Mr. de Blasio, for his part, included $16 million in his budget proposal to provide legal services to immigrants in detention and to asylum seekers. I wish we did not have to include this in our budget. But we have to. Because of the policies emanating from Washington, Mr. de Blasio said. If adopted by the Council this spring, the budget for the fiscal year that begins July 1 would be more than $12 billion above the level of spending when Mr. de Blasio took office. The last budget of Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg's administration called for $72.07 billion in spending. The city would also increase its 10-year capital spending plan to $95.09 billion, a rise of roughly $6 billion. But the bulk of the spending from the capital plan would take place over the next few years. According to the proposal, a pace of spending that surprised some budget watchers and would most likely add to the city's debt service costs. The city estimated only modest increases in tax revenue because of lower revenue from income taxes and real estate sales taxes, offset by a rise in property tax receipts. Carol Kellerman, president of the Citizens Budget Commission, an independent watchdog group, urged a more cautious approach. In an atmosphere of political and economic uncertainty, the executive budget should have exhibited more spending restraint, she said in an email. Almost $1 billion in new agency needs over 2 years, and more than $5 billion in new capital commitments over the next 5 years have been added since the preliminary budget in January. Yet non-property tax revenues have been reduced and reserves have not been increased. Melissa Mark Viverito, the City Council Speaker, and Julissa Ferreras Copeland, the Chairwoman of the Council's Finance Committee, also called in a joint statement, increased reserves as an important measure under the current national political uncertainty.